Well, welcome everybody. Big welcome to those of you who've managed to join us today. It's my first annual public meeting since I joined the Trust as Chair at the start of 2025. It feels a lot longer than that, I have to say, but in fact, that's when I joined. We've got apologies, we know from Patrick Maxwell, but we will check after the meeting whether we received any other apologies and we will record them properly. Shortly, we're going to hear from Neil Suchbury, who's our lead governor, and Roland Sinker, Chief Executive, and Nicola Ayton, Deputy Chief Executive, will speak to our annual report and accounts for 2024-25. They were approved by a board meeting in June 2025. They're published on the Trust website and they've been laid before Parliament. And I know Nicola and Roland will highlight the developments and the issues that have taken place over the last year, but also I hope look forward to the period ahead, because I think we're conscious always about trying to move the organisation forward. As you know, we've welcomed questions prior to our meeting and we've had a really good response this time. For those of you watching live, there's an opportunity for us to go through the questions. You'll be able to post further questions in the meeting chat. If we run out of time and we've got a hard stop at 6:30, we will produce written responses. So if you've got questions that aren't answered today, we will endeavour to answer those properly and to send out our responses. We'll also send out a more detailed response to the questions we do get through today, because sometimes I know we end up with a relatively truncated reply and a fuller reply may be useful. Obviously, since I've joined the board, part of what I've been doing is trying to really get to know the Trust well, you know, a wide range of staff, governors, wider stakeholders. I've visited a lot of parts of the Trust's activity: maternity, Rosie, ICU, neuro, cancer, genomics, a fair number of wards and clinical areas, a tour of the site. I've met with staff side and the senior nursing team, and I've been to various staff groups, consultant engagement forum, and long service awards. There's always more that one can do, and every time I go round any of those areas of our work, you meet fantastic members of staff who are doing brilliant work. You see some really good practice. And then there's always the opportunity, I think, to say, oh, what's driving you mad a bit? What can we get better? Because I think it's important that we always keep thinking, how can we get that bit better? And I think as a board, we are focused, as you would expect, on issues around performance and productivity. The 10-year plan has given us a pretty clear framework of priorities, very much focused on our delivery on our core services, but also the opportunity going forward in the medium term to work out how we can play our part, I think, in developing an NHS that goes beyond the walls of CUH and actually really is centred much more about our patients. So we're trying to make sure that we both focus hard on the here and now, but also do take the opportunity to look forward as a board and work with the executive team on that. So that's by way of an introduction from me. I'm going to hand over. Do I hand over first to Neil or to Nicola? No, I think it's to Neil first, isn't it? Yeah, Neil, let me go to you first as lead governor.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Sally. And hello, everyone. So I'm Neil Suchbury, and the lead governor. I've been a patient governor actually for over 8 years now, and a lead governor since 2021. One of the things I'm really passionate about is giving the patient a voice in all aspects of how our hospital is run. So I, as well as being a governor, I co-chair a patient advisory group for the new cancer hospital, member of a PPI panel in CUH, and also chair a CUH Partners PPI forum. And I'm a patient rep on the MyChart stakeholder group. And I use this to help support being a governor. I'm going to just talk briefly about what we do as governors, some areas of work we've been focusing on this year, and also some of the things we're looking at currently and in the coming year. So quick reminder of what governors do. Formally, we hold the non-exec directors to account for the performance of the board. And what that really means is that we're thinking about what patients and the public want from our hospital, and scrutinise decisions made by the board, and where we find that we need to ask some questions, then that's exactly what we do, and we hold the NEDs to account for that. And we meet regularly in Council of Governors meetings. We have meetings with the non-exec directors. We have seminars to give us some more information about how things are working in the hospital. For example, we had a really interesting one just the other day on the new strategy for digital and AI. We are very keen to grow our membership of the hospital because the members are really what this is all about. We are representing the members. We have about 8,000 signed up at the moment. We haven't seen this increase much over the years. So I would like to encourage all of you to encourage your own friends and family to get involved with CUH and become members and join in. And if you do, you can come to our Medicines for Members lectures. You can go on visits around the hospital to look at wards, get involved in focus groups, listening exercises, and so forth. In addition to those things, we have annual elections for governors every year, and we've welcomed 4 new governors this year, and we said goodbye to 4 governors, which included Ruth Green, who completed a full 9-year term. She was a tireless campaigner on behalf of patients, and we'll miss her energy and insight. Mida Salih and Mahad Nur and Howard Sherif also finished their terms. Karen Woody, Partnership Governor, chaired our Nomination and Remuneration Committee, and through that group we recruited 3 new non-exec directors: Crumpton, Philippa Hurden and Ros Smith, who's just started. So those are the things that the governors do. So now moving on to the next slide. In terms of what we've focused on this year, then, well, this is one of the titles I had on last year's one as well. Pressure on the hospital, it never seems to get any less. Yeah. We know people are waiting in ED for hours, some on trolleys in the corridor, some waiting for more than 24 hours for a bed. And we know that's just not what we want. And that causes pressure on our front door, and these are the reasons for this are many and complex. And I have to say, we do have frequent conversations with NEDs and the board on this area, and I can tell you all that I know the exec are extremely well engaged on this issue around the pressure on the hospital, and I'm sure it'll come up in some of your questions in a moment. In addition to that, we've been engaged with the 2 new important strategic developments in the hospital, looking in the future for how we might deliver better urgent and emergency care and trauma, that's the acute services strategy, and how we might also transform our outpatient strategies. And both of these strategies are looking to work more closely with our local community, with some of the care being moved closer to where you live, and also to make better use of the opportunities afforded by digital technologies. One example of that, for example, is very recently they've implemented a new facility in MyChart to allow you to book your own outpatient appointments. And you'll see more of that sort of thing going on as we go forward. One specific thing I just wanted to briefly mention, as many of you will know, that we had we've got a review ongoing at the moment on the harm caused by a paediatric orthopedic consultant, and it's called Deep Store. And I just want to recognise the harm and the distress that has caused to members of the public and patients who were affected. And we have inquired with the board as to how the review is being conducted, and we wanted to assure ourselves that the review has been done thoroughly and independently, and I can assure you that is exactly what is happening at the moment. And finally, productivity and savings targets. You may well be aware that the government have put in place a new 10-year plan, and set targets alongside that for greater productivity and savings to be had. NHS productivity, including CUH, has declined since COVID. And we're all now working hard to rectify that. And I have to say, CUH, unlike many other trusts, actually has just got on and started to deliver this program very quickly. And they've done it with great consideration for those that are affected by some careful communications. And third, next slide, please, to finish off. Just wanted to just comment briefly on a few things that we're looking at this year. So the NHS 10-year plan I mentioned was published back in July, and one of the areas that it's focusing on is moving care into the community. How that's going to happen is something we're very interested in, because there's clearly some really good benefits to be had to patients for that. We're following progress on improving productivity. We're monitoring developments on the new cancer and children's hospitals. I can say that you may be aware that following the Grenfell disaster or tragedy, that there is a new Building Safety Act passed in Parliament, which places much more requirements on new buildings, and the cancer building, for one, has fallen into scope of that. And that has actually led to a delay in the timing and the timeline for building and opening that hospital, unfortunately. But I think we all agree that buildings need to be erected in a safe way. We'll be looking at the developments in digital and AI, particularly in the area of patient experience. And we want to make sure that these do not lead to unintended inequalities as a result of digital exclusion. And finally, we will, and I certainly will, always champion the patient voice and challenge the board where we feel patients should have a greater say in developments and improvement projects which have a direct impact on their experience. So just to finish off, this is actually my last presentation as lead governor to members. I'll be stepping down from this role after doing it for 4 years. And I have to say, it's been an absolute privilege to represent you as patients and members of the public, and also a privilege to work with this board. Our hospital is well led, and that's a credit to all our execs and NEDs who have worked so hard for so long in such a challenging environment. Thank you.
Neil, thank you very much indeed. And look, I know everybody would want to pay tribute to you. You've been a really brilliant lead governor, because you've been challenging, but in a constructive way. You've felt part of a partnership. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to move the hospital forward. We're all trying to move the trust forward, and you have led the governors as part of that partnership. So I just want, on behalf of the board, to say thank you very much indeed, because it's been a real pleasure to work with you. You're not a patsy, you're not a pushover, but you are always focused on the things that matter to patients, and realistic about the hard choices that sometimes we have to make. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Can I turn to Roland and Nicola to talk through the annual report and the sort of the core themes? So over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Sally. And just to echo your thanks to Neil. And Neil, we very much hope that from the Peak District you'll stay very involved in how we continue to shape services here in Cambridge. So you've been absolutely central to the thinking, particularly around the development of services in the cancer hospital, which I'll touch on in a moment. So thank you, Neil. Sally, if it's okay, I'll talk a bit about the past year, our areas of focus in the past year, and then I'm going to hand on to Nicola, who will talk about the forward plan. So Namu, if we could go to the first slide. So first and foremost, I think, Neil, for the Council of Governors, for our members, for the non-executive directors and the executive directors, at the heart of all that we're trying to do, we think about people. We think about the patients we're here to serve. We think about our staff, and we think about the partners we're working with. And here, if I could, Sally, 3 very brief stories. So on the left-hand side is a little boy, Kane. And Kane, by the age of 8 months, had had over 200 seizures of some description, some form of epilepsy. We can all imagine how distressing and upsetting that would be for Kane and for his family. And because we weren't always able to see what was happening when those seizures were occurring, it was quite difficult to work out exactly what the diagnosis would be for Kane. But using a video technology developed and partnered with consultants at Addenbrooke's and the Rosie, we developed something called vCreate, which enabled the family to safely upload videos of those seizures to enable effectively a remote diagnosis of exactly what was going on for Kane, and then to enable treatment to be tailored for him. And the testimony, Sally, we've had through from Kane's family around the reassurance that that's given them to know that we've got exactly the right diagnosis for Kane is absolutely central. Coming on to our staff, in the centre of the screen there, you can see Professor Jean Abraham, who works across the NHS and the University of Cambridge and with some of our industry partners. And she is doing work through the personalised breast cancer programme. And the work that she has led is looking at the DNA, looking at the fingerprint of every single breast cancer tumour. And in over a third of cases, that very detailed diagnosis is enabling us to change care for the people with breast cancer, which is incredibly significant for both those patients. It's also making much better use of the taxpayer pound. And thirdly, our partners. And what you can see there, which I think we would all recognise, is the front door of our emergency department at Addenbrooke's. We know there are many, many more people coming through our emergency pathways than the hospital was built for. But delivering the sorts of improvements in performance that Annette, you and other colleagues have been challenging us on through Performance Committee with Nick, Sue and Lorraine, it's the work with our partners, James Morrow, in general practice, colleagues in community services, colleagues in social care, that's let us see the improvement that we've seen recently in terms of waiting times. It's a team activity to do the very best we can for our patients, as well as a lot of investment in technology to try and get that working better. So if we go to the next page, that's all very well, the focus on patients, our staff and the public, but what are the scores on the doors? How are we doing as an organisation for our patients and our community? So Sally, the 5 areas you track through the board, in terms of core performance. So first of all, quality. So I think, Sue, Lorraine, James and Quality Committee with Ros, I think we recognise that we have continued strong performance in terms of frontline care. We are testing ourselves on the outcomes for our patients, seeing if they are maintaining the standards that we've seen historically. But we have really 2 areas of concern. One is maternity, where I think Sally, James, Ros, we're moving in the right direction. We're getting into a much better position. And then Neil, you've already mentioned the paediatric orthopedic case, where, as you've said, our focus is on supporting patients and their families, doing a very detailed clinical look back, and then a completely independent external investigation as to whether there were missed opportunities. And we look to publish all of that with great transparency as we go through into the first part of the autumn.
Brilliant. I think the other thing we'd add to that quality list after our last board meeting is infection, isn't it? Is infection control, which we are monitoring very strongly through quality as well. Yes,
absolutely. So then, looking over the last year, I think in terms of waiting times, I think it's good to see strong performance maintained in diagnostics. Interestingly, for the last 7 or 8 years, we've talked about being very strong on elective waits for surgery, very strong on cancer, but having work to do on urgent and emergency care. And urgent and emergency care over the last year has improved greatly, still got a long way to go. The area where we've really slipped for the first time in a long period has been on elective waits and on cancer care. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment to get ourselves back on track by Christmas to the performance that we've seen historically. That's waiting times. On staff, huge thank you to Rohan chairing Workforce Committee and David as our Workforce Director. It's very good to see us fully recruited. Tremendous response from staff to the flu vaccination campaign last winter, and the 17% increase in response to the staff survey, where we still have areas of challenge, but recommender scores as a place to work and to receive care look good. The big issue that we're working through at the moment, as you said, Sally and Neil, is the centrally directed from NHS England and the Department of Health redundancy programme that we're going through at the moment. Very briefly, as we move to the end of this page, on finance, a big thank you to Annette, John, Daniel in Audit Committee and in Performance Committee, 5th year of financial break even. And Mike, I think a capital plan for the year we're currently in of around £94 million, which is fantastic to see in terms of investment in new equipment, technology in particular, and new buildings. But it's an incredibly challenging environment, as evidenced by the need for redundancies that I just talked about. And then lastly, a great deal going on in terms of innovation. Sue Broster is our new Chief Medical Officer. This was your old portfolio. But really here, making best use of taxpayer pound and investing in technology and outpatients, the central management of the hospital, and how people access care through the front door of the trust. So those are the, if you like, the hard facts of where we are. Now, if we go to the next page. Thank you. So challenges that we faced, and Neil, I think we're very aligned on these. So I've talked about the challenge around waiting times. We've talked about paediatric orthopedics. I think on local integrated care, from a strategic point of view, we put a lot of time and energy into better working with general practice, social care, community services. And I think we've got quite a long way to go to really get that to the standard we want it to be at. And Sally, that's an area you're challenging the board on, I think, very appropriately, to see how can we take this forward. And Claire, that's something that you've been leading in some of the successes I'll talk about in a moment. So 3 big areas of challenge to hold in our minds. And if we come to the last of my pages before I hand to Nicola, thank you, Namu. Some areas I think of real success and that we're, I think, very proud of. And always hard to pick out these sorts of areas, but I mean, there were 8 on the first version of this, and Sarah Booth, a big thank you for getting it down to 4. So the first, I think, Lorraine, the work that you and James and other colleagues in Quality Committee have been leading around good care every day. And that is a focus, Lorraine, I think, on the core elements of care. But Sue, it's looking at data, it's getting feedback from patients and frontline staff. And Lorraine, the way that you and Sue articulate this is getting into a virtuous circle of where are things going well in this ward area, where can we make improvements, making those improvements and backing that up with quite a comprehensive ward accreditation programme. So I think that's an area we're very proud of. The staff survey results, I think, again, I've talked about already, I won't cover again. But if I could come on to the acute care strategy, and a big thank you to Claire Stoneham as Director of Strategy for the work she's done, securing £3 million from what was the Department of Community Local Government in the last government to develop an acute care strategy. And at the heart of this are new models of care in and out of hospital to both show what we can do in Cambridge, but also, I think, to meet what we know is going to be really significant population growth that's distinctive about Cambridge. And then lastly, I think we're all absolutely delighted to have appointed a construction partner, Boyd UK, for the development of the Children's Hospital. That's a real success, a triumph, and we'll be integrating mental and physical health for the children of the region, as well as, I think, putting genomics and life sciences at the heart of reimagining how we care for our youngest patients across the region. I would point out, Sally, as I close and hand on to Nicola, the Cancer Hospital is also very firmly on track. We've removed 7 Olympic swimming pools full of earth from the site, so it's all ready to go. The issue we've now got as we go into the winter is to make sure that we don't inadvertently, with this clay-lined pit, create the largest swimming pool in Europe. So work on drainage for that is ongoing as the rain starts as we go into September. That was all I was going to say. Nicola, I'll hand over to you to talk about the future.
Right.
Great, thank you so much. So we've heard from Roland and Neil in particular about some of the challenges we've faced, how we've responded to those, and then the strengths that we've continued to build on. And then Claire, as Roland has already said, has really led for us, and particularly with execs and non-executives here and with the governors, she's led on what our strategy should and will look like that will take us from where we are now into the next 3, 5, 10 years. And crucially, she's done that with others around this virtual table, but crucially also with so many of our staff and our patients and our partners as well over a number of months. And I'm not going to set it out in detail here, but I just want to give you a sense of the headings, really, a sense of how we're really going to focus on what matters most to our patients, to the taxpayer, and indeed to our people, our staff, but also to show you how we are being sufficiently ambitious, really, for what we can achieve here, not just as a hospital, but as a wider health and care system nested within one of the world's leading biomedical campuses, and be really ambitious about what the NHS can in fact do for its patients, for its people and citizens, and what that looks like. So if we move to the next slide, I'll start with how we are really going to focus on the absolute core of what we are here to do as a hospital. And this is where the National Oversight Framework that's recently been published is actually a really helpful set of metrics, set of indicators that show us as a trust where we are compared to our peers, compared to other organisations across the country. And that scores us on a range of areas covering what you would expect. So the quality of the care that we provide, the time that our patients have to wait to access the care that we provide, both electively, non-electively, and for cancer care as well. And then the value for money, the productivity that we are able to represent and demonstrate compared to ourselves, in fact, so compared to where we were in the previous year, but crucially compared to others. And where we've come out in that right now is that we are 70th out of 134 trusts across the country. And I know that you members of the public and the board and our staff have looked at that and said, do you know what, that's not actually where CUH should be, and it's not where we want to be. And so what we will really focus on over the next few months is absolutely tackling the areas where we know we are not as we are certainly not doing as well as we need to be doing, and it's absolutely not where we want to be. So there'll be a major emphasis on waiting times and access to care, and as Roland has says, that will absolutely cover urgent and emergency care, so a focus on the 4-hour standard, of course, which has actually improved materially over the last year, but crucially now really recovering our waiting times for elective care and then for cancer care as well. We'll be focusing on the safety of the care that we provide, and Sally's talked about infection control, and there's as you can see here, there's a reference to the ward accreditation programme that Lorraine has been leading and with colleagues across the organisation to really get to the basics of what makes a ward work and what allows us to provide consistently good, high quality, safe care every day, 7 days of the week. As part of this also, clearly there'll be a major focus, as we've been doing actually throughout this whole year, on productivity, value for money, living within what will continue to be a constrained financial envelope. And rightly so, really, because if we move on to the next slide, we can think about what that allows us to do, both we within the trust, but crucially for our patients across the wider health and care system. And actually, it's only if we are able to A, absolutely provide the best possible care within the hospital, but B, focus on productivity and thinking about how we can live within a reduced resource envelope that then allows us to invest in other areas. So crucially on prevention, on care in community settings that is closer to where people live, closer to their local community, that allows them to stay well and to thrive for longer and stay out of hospital, which we know is often not the right place for people to be. And it is certainly often a more expensive place for people to be cared for. So as you can see, we're working, as Roland says, on making genuine progress on the development of new models of care, which has to be done in partnership with primary care, with local government, and with community providers as well. And we've done a huge amount of work on that through the acute healthcare strategy, which is slightly misleading in terms of its title, because it sounds like all we're sort of interested in is acute care. But really at the heart of that, Claire and others really cleverly sort of inverted that when we were working that through, which is to say, if we're going to build the right hospital and the right size of hospital, we need to look at this question from the other way around. We need to work out what could be done in community settings out of hospital. What would it take to provide the best, most preventative, most proactive health and care system? And then how do you really build the smallest but most effective and really efficient hospital off the back of that? And that's what that work has allowed us to really, I think, for the first time, properly define, so that we can genuinely start to build into it and make it real. And then Roland has already referred to our new hospitals that will be fully integrated with research and with industry partners that will hopefully, and this is at the heart of both of these propositions, allow us to show what is possible if you can fully integrate research with clinical practice and with life sciences, and particularly leveraging and maximising the potential of the position of those hospitals on this campus, which I think then brings us into the final area of focus for us as we look ahead to the next 3 to 5 years in particular, and think about how we're going to truly deliver on the ambitions set out in the government's 10-year health plan. And this is really all about how we use research, innovation, as I said, our position on the biomedical campus, to genuinely change the disease trajectory for real people, to reduce not just the experience of the disease, but the prevalence and incidence of chronic disease in particular. And we've got a whole range of assets that have already made a huge contribution to people's health, but it's now really, over the next 3 to 5 years in particular, about how we, with a huge amount of focus and relentlessness, bring all of that to bear on really on the prevalence of chronic disease in particular, alongside, of course, our existing strengths on rare and specialist diseases. But we know that what really matters to people's lives, and what will make the NHS fit for the future, not just now but for generations to come, will be us working together to finally crack the increasing burden of chronic disease, which is so devastating for people's lives, but is also just an unsustainable demand on the NHS as it's currently set up and configured. So that's where we are in terms of our strategy. We want to continue to work with many of you as we really now put the detail and the colour on this. But then crucially, we've got to turn this into a properly costed 3-year plan, which genuinely allows us to set some very clear metrics, ambitions, describe what good looks like, and then hold ourselves accountable really for delivery. Because as we all know, the strategy is only ever as good as what it allows us to deliver and mobilize and galvanize people around, and that's really the work ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you both of you, and you know, through you, thank you very much to the wider team as well, because you know, there's an incredible amount of sustained effort going on, I know, and that's, you know, both day to day but also juggling with trying to plan ahead as well. And I think you know, we are very fortunate as a board. We're very fortunate with the team that we have. So thank you very much indeed for all that work. Can we move on to questions that we've received? Beth, I'm going to hand over to you if you can start to guide us through them, and then we'll take responses from members of the team.
Yes, absolutely, Sally. Thank you very much. Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Hughes. I'm the Interim Chief Governance and Performance Officer. And as Sally said, we had a really good response rate to questions this year. So I will read out who asked the question and a summary of the question, and then I'll go over to my relevant executive colleague to be able to provide an answer to those. So thank you. So the first question we received was from Sarah Bentnink, and Sarah has asked a question specifically around infection control regulations and training for staff, and in particular cleaning staff, and whether that cleaning staff receive the same infection control training as medical staff. And what the implications are of poor practices. So I'm coming over to Lorraine, our chief nurse, to answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. So I just wanted to start by saying, obviously, infection prevention and control is one of the core elements of the work that Roland and Nicola described. And it's really disappointing to read the details of this question. So I'm very happy to be contacted directly if there's more information that the person who put the question in would like me to discuss with me. In response particularly to training for our cleaning staff all have trust-led induction. When they start with us, they have a training for the requirements of hospital cleaning, and there's also refresher training available to those staff. The cleaning facilities team have audits, benchmark audits to assess the quality of cleaning that's undertaken in all of our hospital areas. And the infection prevention control nursing team undertake audits 3 times a week, and also regular direct inspection of clinical areas, providing advice as they go around to all staff members. I would say that we encourage all patients, families and staff to raise immediate concerns with us if they see anything that they are concerned about within the organisation, whether it's practice or hospital cleanliness. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorraine. Yes. So the second question we received was from Cassie Sparks, and Cassie's question centred around the fact that research from Northumbria University has shown that a significant number of children under 16 are being detained under the Mental Health Act by police in Northern Hospital A&E departments. And the question is whether this occurs in CUH A&E, and if so, if there is a paediatric liaison service to support these children. And again, I'm coming over to Lorraine to answer that question.
Thank you. And thank you, Cassie, for the question. And I know that you've sat in on a number of boards where we've talked about mental health care for children. This is one of the areas that we've really focused in on, and we've worked very closely with the Cambridgeshire Constabulary and the local mental health trust to develop pathways for the care of children and adults with mental health crisis, really to ensure that they receive the right care in the right place. With this collaboration of work, that's resulted in a significant reduction in the number of patients who are detained in our emergency department on a section 136. There's an average of 6 adults per month currently, and we have seen no children brought in on a section 136 since we've been working on this collaboration, which is great. We do obviously have children attended in the emergency department with mental health issues. A majority of those are brought in by their parents or carers, as opposed to the police. We do have a commissioned psychiatric liaison service with CPFT to CUH, and they are embedded in our wider paediatric team.
Very much, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you. So leading on a linked question also relating to the emergency department. So we received a question from Anthony Carpen regarding the chronic lack of capacity in A&E at CUH. And Anthony has asked us what representations CUH has made to ministers regarding this issue, including the possibility of creating a governance and institutional structure that allows the A&E unit to be part funded from the economic growth of Cambridge's sub-region. And Anthony has also added that the A&E unit has not kept up with population growth, with the last extension being in 2001. A specific overflow situation in late July last year with patients overnight in reclining chairs. and whether there's anything regionally being looked at to address the capacity gap. And I'm coming to Nick Kirby, our Chief Operating Officer, who's provided a response to this question.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Anthony, for highlighting such an important area of the care that we provide to local people. We recognise the huge pressures that our emergency services are under, and there's actually a range of things that we're doing, both in the short to medium term as well as that much longer term, as the population in Cambridge is due to grow significantly. So in the short to medium term, I think that the 4 things that I'd highlight are investments that have been made possible by the capital position that we've been able to secure as an organisation. Firstly is enhancing the assessment capacity in the emergency department. Secondly is investment in the redevelopment of a space that we call Clinic 9, which is actually due to complete in November. This will add a further 11 cubicles and 6 treatment chairs to the service. The third thing which we're doing is expanding the urgent treatment centre and the minor injury unit capacity, which will support flow of patients through the main ED and allow us to focus also on some of the patients who have more complex and acute needs. And finally, one of the short-term investments that we're making is the repurposing of some of the non-clinical space, so space that currently isn't used to see patients in the emergency department, to create an expanded waiting area with a further 30 chairs and to co-locate some of the services such as patient triage, assessment and phlebotomy. So there's some really important things that we're doing in the mid-term, short-term, some happening very quickly, but we recognise that there's a lot more that we need to do for the long term. And I think Anthony's right to highlight the opportunity that exists to connect to the economic growth of the city region area. The team led by Claire Stone has, as Roland pointed out earlier, been very successful in securing funds from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to invest in developing a new acute strategy that sets out the vision and ambitions for the next 25 years. This includes not just an ambitious redevelopment of a new acute hospital, but importantly, a reformed model of care, which makes sure that we're able to look after as many patients as possible outside of the hospital setting itself. The work that Claire and the team have undertaken has engaged significantly with patients, so it's very much reflecting the ambitions not just of ourselves but also of the needs of the local community. And absolutely, we will be doing more to work with local politicians, national government, to make sure that the growth of Cambridge finances the development of acute services that we need for our local people.
Thank you, Nick. And can I just add to what you just said? I mean, I think in a way, it's such a good question, and the fact that there is a kind of growth plan for Cambridge gives us the opportunity in some ways to find a different way of trying to take forward what we've been trying to do with our acute strategy, I think. So I think we're very engaged in those conversations, I think. Beth, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to remind those who joined later after we had started that if you would like to ask a question now, there's a question and answer function. And if we don't have time to get to additional questions today, we will provide a response in writing. I'm just aware that quite a few people have joined since we started the meeting. Thank you. So the next question has been submitted by Penny Woods, and Penny has asked a question about relating to the time waiting for a joint replacement, that they were referred for a joint replacement in June 2022 and they are still waiting. And Penny has asked what the longest time anyone has been waiting for an elective operation is at CUH and how many people have been waiting over a year. And whether CUH will set up a support group for people who've been waiting over 2 years to enable us to provide each other with mental health support.
Thank you, Beth. And I think to start with, I just want to say how terribly sorry I am to hear of such a terribly long time that you've been waiting for your operation. It's clearly not acceptable. On receiving your question, I immediately have relayed it on to the service team so that we can understand the details of what's happened. And I'll be very keen to personally take your details after this meeting so that I can follow up personally with you. picking up some of the broader questions that you've raised, I think, as Roland had outlined at the start of the meeting, the hospital has historically had a very good track record in improving waiting times for planned care, and it's only really been over recent months when we've seen a deterioration, particularly for those patients waiting the longest amount of time for planned procedures. This is absolutely a priority area for us, and we're doing a number of things to shorten the waits for patients. These encompass things that will build capacity, so recruitment to new posts, work to improve productivity in services. It also includes things which we're doing to try and work with primary care, so GPs, others in community, so that we can try and put services in place so that patients don't have to come to hospital at all. You asked specifically about the number of patients waiting over 52 weeks, and also the longest patients waiting on the pathway. We publish data, it's published on the NHS England website, so this is very transparent. In July, the last published data from NHS England showed that 4% of the patients on our waiting list were waiting more than 52 weeks, which is, again, absolutely not acceptable, and is something which we are working tirelessly to rectify. And we have every confidence that we'll be in a much better position by Christmas time. In terms of the longest patient on the orthopaedic pathway, they're currently waiting about 20 months. But it is worth noting that this patient was referred to us after a year, having been on a list at another hospital. Nonetheless, this is still far too long, and we have to do better working across the boundaries within the NHS to shorten patient waiting times.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. We received questions from 6 people, which were all raised in relation to the contract with Palantir and the federated data platform. And the questions raised queries around the nature of the contract and also governance related queries associated with that. We'll be providing a combined response to those questions, which were received from Pamela Manning, Katie O'Hara, Jenny Hardacre, Isabel Ornelas, Averil Parkinson, and Hilary Price. And I'm coming over to Roland to answer those questions.
Thank you, Beth. Roland.
Great. Thanks, Beth. So 4 points here. So the first is, just a reminder, the NHS Federated Data Platform is effectively a software information technology tool that allows you to effectively access data from different providers in the health and care system to then learn for better ways in terms of how we can streamline care across the whole health and care system. That's what it's there for. NHS England ran a procurement process, and they selected a company called Palantir to, in effect, be the service provider for that software IT system. And NHS trusts were asked by NHS England to join that federated data platform to enable better streamlining of care across the system. And we, CUH, with I think 129 or 130 other providers, have joined that federated data platform. And the third point I'd make is the focus for us in terms of our engagement with the FDP has been around how we can improve complex discharge of our patients. You can see how by accessing data in different systems, you'd be able to learn where we're doing things badly and how we could do things in a better way. There's a complex picture around how the federated data platform works, and in particular how patients can opt out or not of their use of their data and its engagement in the federated data platform. I think, Sally, Beth, all of that content is set out very, very clearly on the NHS England website if you go to the federated data platform. So I would encourage those who've asked these important questions to go and look there. But Beth, I think when we give the written response to this, we will also be very clear where on our website we set out how people can opt in, opt out, and how their data held by CUH is used where we are the data controller. I think the comments, Sally, or questions around the suitability of Palantir as a provider given some of their other commercial interests, I think is not something that we're able to answer here today. And I think we understand the controversy around Palantir, but this is a decision that was taken through a procurement process by NHS England, and we've entered into the MOU to engage with it. Thanks.
Yes. No, I think for us, it's how we work at our level, isn't it? In terms of patients and their use of data. Yeah. Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Sally. So yes, the next question is received from Janny Brightman, and Janny's asked a question around the death toll of children in Gaza, and whether the board has offered to take any of the children with medical emergencies for treatment at CUH. And Sue Broster, our Chief Medical Officer, will answer this question.
So thank you, Beth. So thank you very much for the question. I think our view is that due to the complexity of organising this kind of activity, this is something that is better coordinated at a national level. And indeed, that's exactly what the government has indicated they would like to do. The Prime Minister, I think some people will be aware, in late July undertook to evacuate initially 50 children and their families from Gaza for medical treatment in the UK, certainly in the first instance. And to date, we've not had a specific request from the UK government to take any specific children for ongoing medical treatment as part of that programme, but we'll continue to engage with that as and when that's asked of us.
Lucy, thank you. Beth.
Thank you, Sue. And I'm coming back to Sue for the next question, which was received from Catherine McIntosh, who's Head of Research and Policy for Cardiomyopathy UK. And this question is asking the board to explain the steps that has been taken to ensure that patients with hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy in Cambridge have access to the mavacamten since its approval by NICE 2 years ago. And the question is particularly asking us about the referral plans for the Inherited Cardiac Condition Service at CUH and Royal Papworth, and asking whether there are any blockers that are caused between the lack of interface between our electronic patient record, which is Epic, and the system that Papworth are currently using.
So thank you. So thank you very much again for the question. I just want to reassure you that we really do recognise the importance of this drug being available to patients for the treatment of hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. So the drug itself has been approved here by the Drug and Therapeutics Committee at CUH, and that's an important, I think, and positive step in making this available to patients locally. There's ongoing discussions at the moment with NHS England regarding how CUH and RPH and Royal Papworth operate together as a specialist centre to support this service. But just to reassure you that the different hospital patient records are not the stumbling block for this service being in place.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, and then I'm coming over to, so we've received two questions from the Red Cross Areas Residents Association, and we'll take those two questions together. So the two questions themselves discuss the long-standing impact that the Red Cross Areas Residents Association feel that the NHS's expansion has had on residents of Queen Edith's ward, and they're specifically raising issues relating to foul waste fumes, antisocial behaviour, and non-compliance with NHS policies, which include concerns about smoking, littering, and parking stress, which affect residential areas. And they're asking about their expectation that the NHS and associated organisations on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus will address these issues and demonstrate the commitment to being a good neighbour. And building on from that, they raised another question highlighting further concerns regarding safety of the highways, illegal and dangerous motorbike and e-scooter activities, and also building on the parking point, ambulances parking on Red Cross Lane, and the obstructions from large vehicles. And just to add, we've had a follow-up question which also relates to smoking, which and scrubs and uniforms in residential streets. And Nicola, as you're answering this, I think that question, the response to that question will be picked up as we answer these two questions, the pre-submitted ones. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you to the members of the public who've raised these issues, which we take very seriously, as we do our obligation and our responsibility to be a good neighbour on the biomedical campus, including with our biomedical campus partners. So absolutely, this is key for us, and we're very sorry about the issues that you've raised. We do have a regular forum, which is led by CBC Limited, of which we contribute and are a partner, so that we can maintain this good dialogue with our neighbours. We continue to speak to staff and remind them of the impact of some of the behaviours and issues that you've raised, and that does come through our corporate communications as well as conversation with members of staff. We do inform patient, staff and other users of our services, including other visitors, about the where on the campus and on the trust site cars and pedestrians and others can go, and we remind them about the fact that there's no waiting and there are no through routes that should not be used as a mechanism to try to just get through the hospital site and cause obstructions. Crucially, we are really taking these issues very seriously when we're thinking in particular about the new builds. So as an example, when we are looking at the new hospital builds that we talked about earlier, there won't be any open drains. We're making sure that there'll be sufficient space and ways in which surface water drainage will happen properly. So that should address some of the issues that you're describing, particularly in relation to the Rosie. When it comes to smoking, again, this is actually where we've taken the concerns of residents very seriously, and we took the decision to put a smoking shelter on the site, which is actually in contravention to the policy for NHS sites that they should be entirely smoke-free. But in the end, we took a pragmatic decision because of the impact it was having on our neighbours of staff going off the site in order to smoke or to vape. We decided instead that we should in fact place a shelter so that staff could remain within the site and not then have that impact on our neighbours in those residential areas. So I hope that is an example of how seriously we take that. Just on some of the specifics in relation to highways and scooters and motorbikes. So again, we have worked with our campus partners on this specifically. Clearly, the safety of the site is really important, not just for our visitors and patients and local residents, but also for our staff as well. So there's a whole load of improvements that have been made to the way the roads work and the cycle lanes are demarcated. And we've worked closely with the local authority and the police on that as well. In terms of the scooters, look, they're really important because we absolutely want to improve the number of people. Sorry, we absolutely want to encourage more people to come to the hospital and to the campus in ways that do not have an adverse impact on the environment. And given the climate emergency, it is really important that we continue to promote and in fact increase the numbers, the ways in which people can access the site in a way that doesn't cause air pollution and further climate change. So scooters are really important, but they do need to be do need to be driven responsibly and of course in line with the law. So we absolutely will continue to remind staff, and it's a good prompt for us to do that again and provide some additional training. And I think that picks up the issues that have been raised. There is that point about uniform policy and staff adhering to what is, of course, both an NHS policy and a policy here at CUH. And again, that is just one of those issues where we just have to keep reminding people, tackling it when we see it, and supporting it with other communications. Thank you, though, for raising those issues. And the truth is we will just have to keep working with you on these things because unless you stay on top of them, they get worse again. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Beth.
Thank you, Nicola. So we have received a question from Councillor Imogen Blackburn-Horgan, and this is a question about the relationship between CUH and ACT, which is a charity, in terms of ACT as a landlord providing social housing to our CUH staff, and how CUH supports staff to ensure maintenance is carried out in a timely fashion, with the priority that all staff are fully supported to live in decent homes, with a commitment from CUH to ensure no staff are put in a position of no fault eviction. And I'm coming over to Mike Keach, our Chief Finance Officer, to answer that question.
Thank you.
Great, thanks Beth, and thanks for the question. On staff accommodation, we're really pleased that we're able to provide over 800 accommodation units to our staff. Those are managed by Sanctuary Housing though, rather than ACT. So Sanctuary Housing manage those units on our behalf. And when staff enter into tenancy agreements with Sanctuary Housing, as you'd expect, those agreements need to comply with the relevant laws and legislation. It is Sanctuary Housing that are responsible for maintaining and upkeeping the units. But our property team here at CUH regularly meet with the housing team to make sure we're reviewing performance, and we undertake site visits on occasion as well. In terms of eligibility criteria, which this question partly references, we need to ensure that those staff who are in the greatest need have access to accommodation on the campus. And we keep our plans under review to ensure that we're meeting overall the Trust objectives, with also an aim to make sure we make best use of the accommodation that we have available. As you might expect, once staff leave the Trust's employment, they're no longer eligible for the on-site housing that we provide. So unfortunately, those tenancies do have to come to an end at that point.
Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike. And we have a further question received from Councillor Imogen Blackburn-Horgan as well. And this question is asking for clarification on the formal agreement between CUH and the Cambridge Biomedical Campus regarding member contributions. And Imogen is asking about the level of financial contributions since the formation of the Cambridge Biomedical Campus annually and cumulatively, and whether the NHS procures contracts through a regulated process, and if so, and how that process has been applied. And Mike, I'm coming back to you to answer this question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Beth. And for those not familiar, Cambridge Biomedical Campus Limited, or CBC Limited, it was created in 2021, and it's a company limited by guarantee and a non-profit partnership, which is representing the health, research, education and life sciences organisations that are located on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. So its purpose is to support the development of the campus, and programmes are designed to do things like make the campus a better place to work, to visit, and to live beside. And we've had some questions from local residents earlier. Like other member organisations, CUH pays an annual member contribution to CBC, and the sum of that is informed by the budget setting process that CBC Limited goes through. The member contributions are disclosed in our accounts. We declare them as a related party transaction because we're a member of that organisation. And in the most recent year, 31st of March 2025, the contribution was £500,000 to CBC Limited. And as I say, they're reported in the accounts for previous years as well. On the aspects related to procurement in this question, as a public body, CUH is absolutely subject to public procurement regulations under the 2023 Act. We have our own controls in place to make sure we comply with the procurement requirements, and these are set out in our standing financial instructions. And actually they go further than the procurement regulations in terms of making sure that we ensure value for money for the taxpayer. The extent to which those apply to CBC Limited, procurement regulations apply to us for the purchase of goods and services and works contracts, whereas the payments to CBC reflect member contributions. But CBC Limited itself has its own procurement processes to make sure that they do ensure value for money on their purchases, including, as you'd expect, securing multiple quotations in line with its own policies. And those policies seek to align with the public procurement regulations.
Great, thank you, Mike. Beth.
Thank you very much. That actually concludes the questions that we had pre-submitted ahead of time. And so we do have the opportunity to answer some of the questions that have been asked this evening, which you'll be able to see in the Q&A. So the first question is from Huda Abdullah, and the question is about how often the board talks to Wes Streeting about the pressures on the hospital. I don't know whether whether Sally, if you're happy to...
Any of us can answer this. I mean, it's not so much talking directly to Wes Streeting. I think we talk to all sorts of parts of the NHS, from NHS England through the region, through ICBs. We also talk to the department. Bluntly, and the hard truth is, we can talk all we like about the pressures we're under. It is no different than everybody else. And we have got, we have a responsibility, bluntly, to both raise the issues, which is why I talked earlier on about proposals for further growth in Cambridge. I think that is an opportunity for us to push hard to improve our acute provision. But we are part of, of an organisation with lots of trusts all over the country who are under similar pressure, and so. In a sense, what we have to do is get stuck in and deliver, whilst also be clear that ultimately patient care has to be paramount.
Thank you, Sally. And then we have had a question from Ingela Oberg, who has asked, who has said, with AstraZeneca's announcement to halt major further investment to life sciences sector in Cambridge, given the difficult markets in the UK, how does this affect research into cancer treatments, for example, with the Cambridge Cancer Research Hospital in mind? And what are CUH doing to raise this to government to ensure our patients have access to the newest drugs, new trials, and are able to partake in drug-related research studies? And Roland, would you be able to answer that one, please?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the question. So, I mean, Nicola, I think as you set out in the strategy, and Neil, you alluded to this with Sally, we are clearly very committed here to the interface between our patients, the National Health Service or the health and care system, our university partners, and a very wide range of industry colleagues with whom we work closely together. And that's to deliver both economic growth and new ways of keeping people well and intervening in a way that's tailored to them when they're poorly. We believe that there's lots of great content and ambition in the National Life Sciences Sector Plan and also in Chapter 8 of the 10-year plan. And I think in that, Sally, Nicola, Mike, others, we can see some really terrific things are happening around data. It's great to see the announcement from Microsoft following on from Google around investment in artificial intelligence today. We think the position in terms of the pharmaceutical industry in this country is vexed, to say the least. And I think it's very well trailed in terms of the challenge around the percentage of NHS spend on drugs versus comparative health and care systems, and also the clawback mechanism, which is, I think, what's causing so much difficulty for the British pharmaceutical industry at the moment, and has led to the announcements that we've heard from variously Lilly, Merck, and AstraZeneca over the last few days. So what we're doing about it, I think two things. First is deeply committed to AstraZeneca as a partner in Cambridge. They've been amazing in terms of over 100 collaborations with us and the University of Cambridge. Their role getting the Cambridge South Station funded and now almost complete. And I could go on and on in terms of the strong partnership working we've seen with them. What we're doing with them at the moment is all we can to make Cambridge a major investment centre of choice for them. What we do in terms of clinical trials, aligning our research infrastructure with theirs, work on data and tissue terms of how we can improve healthcare. So we're doing that here in Cambridge. And then we are doing an enormous amount of discussion behind the scenes nationally. Sally, you alluded to some of that, to say, look, what's the way through in terms of how we could close this funding gap? And Mike CUH was very grateful to you today, responding so quickly to Sally, Nicola and I in terms of what the options might be for how the NHS nationally could move to close that gap. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. So we have a question from Randall Evans, and Randall has said that on 2 occasions, specialists at CUH from different departments have written to their doctor without sending a copy to them, and that Randall only discovered this when he was looking at his GP's website, and has asked whether this is policy to not include the patient in copies of correspondence. And Sue, I think as CMO, they'll be coming over to you to answer that.
Yeah, no, so thank you, and thank you for the question. So I'm really sorry that this has happened. Just to absolutely reassure you, that is not our policy. Our preference is always to include patients in any correspondence from the hospital, because it's about your care, so it's really important you are. There are sometimes exceptions to that, but only for very specific reasons, and that wouldn't be our routine practice. So I will take the opportunity just to remind our clinical teams that that's always our default to do that, and I'm sorry that's been your experience.
Thank you very much, Sue. We have had a few more questions that have come through relating to the FDP and the clarification on the opt-out service. I think the best way to answer that is following Roland's answer earlier, is that we will provide a written response on this and direct people to where the right information is. I think we've answered all but one of the questions now, and there's a question that's just come in from Councillor Amy Blackburn-Horgan, and the question is, how will the unintended negative consequences of such a large movement of people, both staff and patients, be mitigated for residents? And Roland, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, I mean, Nicola, you gave, I think, a very comprehensive answer to the work we need to do generally to be the very best neighbour we can be to our local communities, with all of the other partners on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. And Nick, in your previous role, this was something that was at the heart of your job as the Managing Director for Cambridge Biomedical Campus Limited. I think in answer to this question, we're obviously very engaged with the broader Cambridge community around plans for housing and for transport, park and ride through to CSET, through to all the other mechanisms that are being discussed. But I think at the heart of a lot of the strategy that you heard about from Nicola and other colleagues, how we treat people away from the Cambridge Biomedical Campus and support them across the region, both the patients, but also make sure that staff aren't having to come to the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, less essential, will be an absolute centrepiece. I mean, Sue Broster, in your role as a consultant in the neonatal intensive care unit, the work that you've done supporting patients across the region, I think, has been a really good example of how we can avoid bringing people in unless it's essential. Thanks, Beth, and thank you for the question.
The end of the questions, Beth.
They are still coming through, actually. I think that there is a delay on the questions coming through, so I think if any further questions are asked this evening, we won't be able to get to them, but we will, and we'll be able to answer the ones that we can see. Yes. So there is a question around whether, according to residents, there is a need for a toilet at the main bus station and for a free shuttle bus to the new station, and whether these are being considered. I don't have a direct answer on that at the moment, and I think that's something that we'll have to take away. Yeah. So that was oh, okay. There's two more questions, and
let's do those two, and then let's call it, and then we'll stop. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question from Owens Amukpo, and they've said that patients with autism or other neurodivergencies tend to experience longer waiting times and difficulty in getting on elective waiting lists due to inadequate advocacy for support, leading to problems such as diagnostic overshadowing, miscommunication, and delayed referrals to care services. How does CUH tackle these issues and plan to improve these gaps and represent such data more transparently? I wonder if the best way to answer this question is perhaps Claire, through some of the work that is ongoing as a system about how we're supporting, looking at our role in the wider community.
And I think Lorraine, sorry if I could as well, and I think Lorraine, Sue, or David may have a response on that as well, Beth. I think that's right. If Claire want to give an overview in terms of the strategy.
Lorraine's struggling with. I think Claire's struggling with her mute button by the look of it. So let's try Lorraine first.
Can I think through the question? Sorry, it's quite a long question. I'm sorry, I haven't got an immediate answer. I wish I had, but I haven't got an immediate.
Can I suggest that actually we take this question away so that we don't give a kind of the cuff answer, but really think about it and try and draw on what different colleagues are doing and are involved in, because I think that would actually be more productive, really. So that's not in remotely to not take it seriously, quite the opposite. It's to make sure we answer it properly. Beth, what's the final question?
The final question is one relating to how quickly CUH can start a drug trial and whether we can speed up the process to attract international medical studies to shore up our links with the research community in Cambridge and nationally.
Good question.
Roland, I think that's probably building on from one of your earlier answers.
Yeah. Yes. So to be very direct about it, we are not as fast as we should be on the setting up of trials in either the University of Cambridge or in the hospital, and it's an area we're looking at. It's both process, resourcing, and it's also about ability to take risk. So yes, it's an area we're putting on quite hard.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you very much for navigating our way through that. And can I just thank everybody who has taken the trouble both to turn up, but also to ask questions. And I have to say, I have at other trusts, I have been involved in chairing and being a member of as a board of annual public meetings. And I think this has been an actually constructive and open and useful conversation, which is really the purpose of these meetings. So thank you very much indeed. We will make sure that we come back to you with written responses, both in terms of any questions that weren't answered, but also to make sure you've got the summary of the questions that we were able to answer. And I think finally, if I can say, I hope that people attending have had a feel that this is that we take governance of the trust extremely seriously, both through the board and also through the Council of Governors. And I think as Neil explained, in a sense, the governors play a role of being an extra, almost like a feedback loop to make sure that we are properly in touch, particularly with patients and the public, which I think is very, very important. I think as chair, I'm conscious that as a trust, we've got an awful lot of which we should be really proud. But we are also relentless in pushing hard on performance and delivering value and efficiency, and that's particularly important in the current situation that we're in. But above all, in the end, our focus is obviously on care for patients. But I think what we're conscious of is care for patients isn't a standstill thing. We have to keep evolving and looking at how we're delivering that care to make sure it's really working for everybody. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And we will get back to you as soon as possible with our responses. And thank you very much to the team for taking part. Thank you. Bye-bye.